Karmic Boomarangs. My lesson today has a couple different pieces, and it's sort of like a puzzle, right? So I'm going to mark the puzzle pieces and then put that all together at the end. So stick with me if at the beginning there's pieces that don't seem to flow. The Science of Mind textbook, which is our textbook of the Science of Mind philosophy by Dr. Ernest Holmes. You can see mine's pretty beat up. The definition of karma. Karma is the subjective law of tendency set in motion by the individual. Now, of course, science of mind sometimes can seem like a different language. You might consider substituting personal for subjective. In other words, karma is the personal law you set into motion by your own tendency of thought. The good news is this means you get to set up your own law based on what you believe. Karma is a mental law acting through you, through the individual. It's not acting to you. Karma is not an external force. It's not a system of punishment or reward dealt out by a god. The concept is actually more understood as a natural law, like gravity. The problem is that most of us are sometimes ignorant to our beliefs and why that affects us in our personal life. So it's only the ignorance of not setting this law into motion for ourselves that causes suffering. Now, karmic law is the use that man makes of his mentality, and karma is not kismet. Kismet is the fate or destiny, which usually means no matter what, it's already predetermined. We do not believe that. That's not, karma simply means that we put into motion our mental tendency, which does mean we can change the outcome based on what seeds we are planting. All right. So, we all know that when we live our life, that things happen. Unexpected things, yes? We were once comfortable, and now we're not. We know that all these things that are happening in our life are an effect. And sometimes that's hard to remember, meaning many times when life is dealing us challenges, we want to mess with these effects, which means then that you're using the effects in your life and you're reacting to those things. And I'm going to get back to that a little bit. When we understand that we can set up karma, set up our mental tendency, set up our own law that is planted with peace, harmony, and love, when that rules in our thinking, we will see that effect in our lives, bringing happiness, health, prosperity. And any karma we may have set into motion in the past, different from that, will now be changed. In other words, you don't have to undo karma. If something was set into your conscious, or really what happens for a lot of us, subconscious earlier in your life, you don't have to dig out those pieces. Rather, you can set a new intention or a new tendency of thought, and the effect will take place. All right. Puzzle piece number 2. Boomerangs. What do we know about boomerangs? They come back. They come back. That's right. And of course, the most common use of a boomerang we know today are toys. And you can actually watch on YouTube, which I did because I wanted to see exactly how do you throw that boomerang. If I wasn't on vacation, you'd all actually have a boomerang right now. I looked it up and it was like, oh, it'd be great for each of us to have our own boomerang. But if you go on YouTube, you can see it. And so it's like a Frisbee in that you're playing Frisbee by yourself, in that you throw it into the wind and it circles back around, floats down, and you catch it when it comes back to you. Now, did you know that boomerangs were originally hunting tools? Yes. Fascinating. And accurate throw of a solid boomerang could mean a meal for an indigenous person way back in time. But you better duck if you missed. That was a joke. So the boomerang is a visual metaphor for karma. Does that make sense? And in using that metaphor, you know what you throw out to the universe comes back round to you. What is that mental tendency for relationships, money, job, creativity? What's returning to you in your life? Now, if you're like me, sometimes things happen in life where it's like, that was not my boomerang. I swear that was not my boomerang. Now, if I gave you a boomerang right now, could you accurately throw it so that it would come back to you? Yeah, if you haven't had practice, then you probably need practice. Spiritual practice. If you're not practicing your spiritual daily practice, determining what you want to throw into the universe, if you're not being intentional, then whatever you learned as a child, whatever you hear in the news, whatever comes along to you, that's what you get. Puzzle piece number 3. Do you see electricity? No? How do you know it's there? The effects. In other words, you could feel the electricity if you, like when I was a kid, accidentally plugged something in. Whoa, what was that? What about thought? Is that a thing? Just like electricity. We haven't been taught that. So that is something, again, to be practiced and understood, that yes, electricity or thought, it's all energy, as Albert Einstein would say. Thoughts are things, and like electricity, you can tap into the power of thought. You just have to plug in. Plug into what, you might say? Plug into your source, your higher power, whatever that is for you. You remember that story you probably heard as a kid who a person was granted their wish by a genie that everything they touched turned to gold? How did that turn out for them? They weren't very happy once they discovered they now couldn't eat, sleep, or hug anybody because they all turned to gold, right? Your thoughts don't work like that, thank God. Right? Why not? Because in karma, we learned it was the tendency of your thought, your clusters of thought, your belief. You have a frequency and a power behind your thought in order for it to take effect. So I could have a boomerang and I could toss it, or I could have a boomerang and I can throw it. Which one's going to get me the result I expect? Because of the intention, because of the power behind it. Same thing with your thought, right? I always like to say, your thought can be like a steering wheel. You're not going anywhere if you don't have your foot on the gas. Well, what's the metaphor for the pedal, the gas pedal? Your heart, the heart power, right? What your intention and energy is behind that. It takes both of those things. You have to have oomph behind your thoughts, your intentions. You have to have oomph behind that boomerang when you send it out. And it takes a daily practice. So, now it comes to you. What boomerangs are you sending out into the world? Or are you even conscious of what you are sending out into the world? Because if you don't have a daily practice, it's potentially likely that you're just, you know the pinball machines? Bopping around like a pinball based on what you hear, what you see, what's going on, what's happening next, and reacting to the effects in your life without circling back to your higher power, the first cause. And I'll talk about first cause in a minute. And when you run your life by your reactions, you're not leading your authentic life. If you're watching the news and letting those headlines dictate your day, or perhaps there's other distractions in your life that keep your mind busy on pushing back whatever circumstances or details you have going on in your life. You start trying to manipulate the effects. You think your power is in manipulating the effects that are happening in your life. Because, again, the electricity can't be seen. You have to spend time planting your seeds of thought. But it's easy to feel like you have to do things, manipulate things to make stuff happen. But really, it's not about the doing. When you run your life by your reactions, you're reacting at the level of whatever is being thrown at you. In other words, you must be a leader of your life to choose the boomerangs you want to see. You must become the first cause of your life. You must pick and choose. You must know who you deeply are. You must know your purpose, because then you will find your power to throw out that karmic boomerang to create your best life. Rising above. Again, deeply knowing who you are and what you stand for rather than reacting on what's going around you, which means that, in your spiritual practice, you may be separating yourself from all of that outer. For those of you that missed Connie's meditation, you missed a good one. I love the fact of how you put together that, wow, all these people staring at a cosmic event, bringing humanity together as one, understanding that there is a higher power, a higher connection that we all have together on this earth. But you must choose to focus your intention in order to determine what boomerang you're going to send out each day. Let's talk a little bit about reactivity, puzzle piece number 4. You have a tennis racket. I have a tennis racket. I serve the ball. If all I do is stand there with the racket, what happens to that ball?
Nothing. It bounces away.
It bounces off your tennis racket. Why? Why doesn't it just stop and fall?
Properties of the ball. Because of the net.
It's like a boomerang, right? Because formally stated by the laws of physics, Newton's third law is, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. That statement means that in every interaction there are a pair of forces acting on the two with the object. Forces always occur in pairs when one body pushes against another. The second body pushes back just as hard. Does this remind you of maybe as a kid, your brother or sister kind of And what it really leads to is an eye for an eye, which means everybody ends up blind. Right?
Right.
Same thing with baseball. The pitcher throws the ball at you. Even if you just put your bat out, what happens to the ball? Same principle. All right. How does this tie in? A John Lennon quote. When it gets down to having to use violence, then you're playing their game. They will irritate you, pull your hair, flick your face to make you fight. Because once they've got you violent, then they know how to handle you. The only thing they don't know how to handle is nonviolence and humor. Nonviolence and humor. I had to think about that for a while. I'm still not done thinking about that. But here's what I do know. Nonviolence and humor are not functioning at the same level, the same energy, than those who are looking for a fight. Right? Einstein said no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. Well, again, that means moving above the fray. That means coming at your problem, our problem, with a different level of energy. That's not so easy to do, especially when you're in it. It means that you have discipline. And how do you gain discipline? I don't mean discipline as in punishment. I mean, how do you gain a discipline? Practice. Practicing mindfulness and consciousness. That's what we need more of. So, whether you like Obama or not, that's not the point here. I was reading an analysis on why they thought Obama's tweet about Charlottesville made history. No, Obama's tweet about Charlottesville made history by being the most liked and the most retweeted, meaning most resent back out there, because this is what Obama said. No one is born hating another person because of color of his skin or his background or his religion. Now, those weren't his words. Those were President Nelson Mandela's. But think about that. The response that people had to that comment made history. Why do you think that is?
It's truth.
Because it's truth with a capital T. Right? I mean, there's lots of stuff happening in social media, you know. But why would something be so just like hit the center? It resonates in that truth. Like light overcoming the darkness, that truth hit people at their core. That's more of what we need to be and do. And that takes discipline, which takes practice. And, you know, one of the things I was going to also say about that is he really hit things at the heart, which means we went back to the power center, right? It wasn't just his mind, although, you know, again, it's the whole mind. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Talk a little bit about regulation here in a minute. So your challenge is to throw out karmic boomerangs of higher thoughts and intentions, shifting the energy, which takes practice, meaning whatever's going on in your life, whatever challenges you may have, you are being asked to practice. Asked to practice shifting your thoughts to first cause, to higher power, to more knowing, to that greater truth, because that's where your power is, not by trying to manipulate the situation. So in our form of prayer, spiritual mind treatment, we start with first cause. That is, we don't stare at the effects of what's going on in our life. We start back by knowing that there is one power, a higher power for good in the universe that we can use if we choose. Plug in. Not by looking, not that we're ignoring what's happening here. Yes, we see and feel the effects. But that's not where the change needs to start. It needs to be by going back to the higher power, just like Obama making that comment. There is a greater truth for whatever is happening in your life. What is that truth? Dan Siegel is a well-known New York Times bestseller author. neuroscientist and psychologist from UCLA, the Mindfulness Center there. And he's shown via research that daily mindfulness enhances literally the physics of our brain, physiology of our brain. When we use mindfulness on a regular basis, it changes our brain connections. It allows us to regulate our emotions, moods, attention, thoughts, behaviors, and relationships. Because when we learn to regulate, in other words, not be dramatic and reactionary about things happening to us, when we can regulate, we have access to more areas in our brain based on the 100 billion neurons that are networked here. I wish Johnny was here. I don't know where she went to, but the brain expert would say to you, when you're fired up, your amygdala is fired and you don't have access to those 100 billion neurons. And it takes practice to be able to know, oh, I know right where to plug in. Now, of course, we all get stuck. Meaning many of you who have practiced science of mind may be saying, I know this stuff. I just like giving metaphors as far as encouraging the daily practice, especially based on what's happening in our society. And a lot of times we have subconscious thoughts, which means we're trying to figure out why certain things are happening, and we're saying, no, I really didn't plant that seed. No, I did not send out that boomerang. But you see, when we were a child, we got told certain things, and there were certain, I'll call it vibrations and frequency in our family environment. And that is now innately a part of us. And that's the harder one to dig out, but you know it's there. And that's why we have Science of Mind classes. Reverend Michael is teaching perfect class, building a healing consciousness. Again, the discipline to do your daily practice, to choose what your intention is. And by God, if you don't know what you want to do, start with love. Right? Based on the current society. You know, this wasn't in my lesson, but I keep saying to myself, you know, if my heart cells decided to compete with my kidney cells because my stomach cells were different than my muscle cells, would I have a body? Humanity, oneness, understanding, we are all one. So you have to, your challenge now is to determine what boomerangs you want to send out to the universe that you can get your heart power lined up behind. One day I was thinking about all the people that I feel live a very meaningful and powerful, authentic life. You know, I know a lot of stuff has been put around based on the 20-year anniversary death of Princess Diana. And it's like, wow, it's sort of amazing that 20 years later, it's still, a lot of people thirst and attract to that. And I already mentioned, you know, Obama's tweet as far as just the example of taking truth and nailing certain things that are happening and how to work with that. And what could I imagine are the practices of those spiritual folks who I feel, and they don't, you know, maybe they're not seen as spiritual, Obama may not be seen that way, but the point being people who are living an authentic life, who are able to nail truths where when you hear it, you just go, yeah. And what could I imagine that those people who I think of, what are their practices? What is their language? Literally, their language. What are they saying to themselves? What karmic boomerangs are they choosing? What do they have their attention on? And what are their choices that make them who they are? Now, I have to say, when people used to say to me, you know, who would be your hero or your model, I'd say, I don't have any one person. There's lots of different parts of folks. And I want to make sure that I'm being clear that I'm not saying you should compare yourself or try to adopt other people's authentic life. You must line yourself up with what you know are your gifts, your strengths, and your passions. But I was searching for, if I had a boomerang, what would I put on that boomerang as my phrase or word that I want to throw out into the universe? And then I found this little quote, think like a proton and stay positive. A science joke. So I know that if I asked you to leave today that it might not happen. So I'm going to take the next few minutes, because it's been 4:45 for the last hour. I'm going to ask you, if you will, to close your eyes and take a moment. Just center yourself, as in, if necessary, just watching your breath for a moment. And just let this seed settle in. This may not come to you today, it may come to you tomorrow, but I'm just planting a seed. Take a moment to imagine, what is the absolute best human version of you? Pick out a characteristic or a value that would represent the absolute best human version of you. Now imagine writing on a boomerang that phrase, word, value, characteristic. Label a boomerang. And now, as you bring yourself back into the room, I'll ask you to mentally take that boomerang every morning and to throw that boomerang out into the universe. Head, heart, mind. Knowing that that boomerang will come back to you. And then look for it. Meaning, if your boomerang had love, send out the love boomerang in the morning, and throughout the day, look for love coming back at you. I'm going to end with something from Pope Francis that I thought was beautiful. He uses a lot of don'ts, which in Science of Mind we would like to say, well, don't focus on the don'ts, focus on the do's. But it's still beautiful and you get the drift. A gentle reminder from Pope Francis. This life will go by fast. Don't fight with people. Don't criticize your body. Don't complain. Don't lose sleep over your bills. Look for the person or people that make you happy. If you make a mistake, let it go and keep seeking your happiness. Never stop being a good parent. Don't worry so much about buying luxuries and comforts for your home. And don't kill yourself trying to leave an inheritance for your family. Those benefits should be earned by each person. Don't dedicate yourself to accumulating money. Enjoy. Travel. Enjoy your journeys. See new places. Give yourself the pleasures you deserve. Allow your dogs to get closer. And don't put away that fine glassware. Utilize that new dinnerware. Don't save your favorite perfume. Use it to go out with yourself. Wear out your favorite sports shoes. Wear your favorite clothes. Why not now? Why not pray now instead of waiting before you go to sleep? Why not call now? Why not forgive now? We wait so long for Christmas, for Friday, for reunions, for another year, for when I have money, for when love comes, when everything is perfect. Just look. Because everything perfect doesn't exist. Human beings can't accomplish this. In other words, everything as it is perfect. It simply was not intended to complete perfection here. Here is an opportunity to learn. So take this challenge that is life and do it now. Love more, forgive more, embrace more, love more intensely, and leave the rest in the hands of God. Namaste.